Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Hope City. My name is Peter, and my wife Tiffany and I are so honored that you're here with us today. We are concluding our series called Stuff Jesus Never Said. And this has been a series where we've been taking a look at little snippets that our culture talks about and maybe even ascribes to Jesus. And yet we find that there is much difference between what we think he said and what he actually said. You know, last year I turned 40, which means that in this September I'll be turning 41. There's something interesting that happens when you turn 40, though, and if you've turned 40, you know what I'm talking about. There's just things change. All of you that are like 38, 39, you're looking and you're like, yeah, right. Like nothing could change. Like what is actually going to change? I'm 38. I feel great. Wait till you turn 40. It's like the next day, like you go to the doctor, and the doctor literally starts talking to you differently. They start using words like sir and ma'am, right? Like they look at you different. I've also leveled up my healthcare experience. I have what's called specialists now. Like it's a whole new level. Like I've unlocked this new level of gaming, and these specialists are like, yeah, listen, you need to pay attention to what you're eating and what you're drinking. Like you need to be careful that your nutrition and all these things are balanced. And he must have said, seen what was on my face after he was like, you're getting older. Like he quickly changed gears and he was like, but you're not that old. It's okay. It's okay. Like it's all right. See, what happens is when I go home and I look in the mirror, I'm like, I don't feel 40. Like 40 doesn't seem like, it's not, first off, I'm not bothered by 40. But also I'm like, I just feel like me, right? Like this is just who I am, and hopefully that kind of hangs out for quite a while. And yet the doctor's saying, but you need to pay attention to what you're seeing in the mirror, because what you see in the mirror, it can kind of predict what's going to happen in some of your health. And so I got talking with Tiffany about this, and she was like, well, you know, I noticed that like when I make broccoli, like you don't really participate with the family. That's correct. She knows not to even bring cauliflower in the house. Cauliflower is the original sin of like that did not exist before the Garden of Eden, before there was the fall and sin. Like that happened afterwards. Cauliflower and broccoli, it's like basically its cousin. So it's all gross. Like I don't want any of that stuff. And so I was kidding around. She was serious. I kind of kept pushing, be like, nah, I'm not going to eat that, not going to eat that. And finally she goes, fine, you do you. Like you do whatever you're going to do. And I was like, ooh, push that one a little too far. I'm sorry about that. But what she meant by you do you is essentially like, you're going to just do whatever you want to do anyway, so just go ahead and do it. Like, what do I even have to say about this? If you think about this phrase, you do you, this phrase perfectly captures where our culture is right now. The culture that you swim in and breathe in and like live in. When you leave here, you are a part of this kind of culture, which says that you are the main character of life. In fact, like the main hero is the one that looks back at you in the mirror. So who is the most important person? It's what's staring back at you. It's not your neighbor, it's actually you, right? Like focus on you, because this is what you do you says. It says, I'm going to base my happiness on what's staring back at me. Happiness is found in meeting that person's needs. Sounds great, except for the fact that it's just not true. Like this is great, but it's a false representation of reality. It's kind of like a funhouse mirror. Anybody walked in front of a funhouse mirror, and sometimes you feel really good about yourself because you're like, I'm 900 feet tall and very, very thin, or you're like this kid and you're like, what happened back here? Like, I don't look like that, right? Right? Like, tell me I don't look like that. A funhouse mirror stretches the truth. It distorts the image of truth. And this can happen when all we do is base ourselves off of what's happening in that mirror. We base our happiness off of that. So just to say, like, you do you, means that there's no consequences. If it feels good for you, go ahead and do that. Our society rewards ourselves for following our own hearts. You know, early on in the series, we talked about how the Bible tells us very, very plainly to be careful because the heart is desperately wicked, and it can actually convince ourselves that we're better than we really are, convince ourselves that we're the heroes of our story. Think about our culture right now. Think about what it's pushing. Our culture is pushing gender fluidity, that you no longer are the gender that you were born with, but now it's up to you. When you look in the mirror, how do you feel? You do you. Hypersexuality, where it says, you can do whatever you want with your body because, after all, it's your body. What does God have to say about your sexuality? It's up to you. Or overconsumption. We gobble up everything with our money, with our time, with our resources. We just say, you know what? I want the next, the best, the greatest, the latest. And we gobble up food, we gobble up, and we consume more and more. And I get it. We also live in a cancel culture, and half of you are like, pressing that button right now, right? Like, this guy needs to be careful. But the reality is, like, if all we do is base our happiness, base our truth off of what we see in the mirror and what we feel, we find ourselves sliding into what we call relativism. Relativism says that the belief that everything is relative. Self-describing here. But the idea is this, that everything is relative to you, right? Like, your health is relative to you. There's no standard of health. There's no standard of living. Nothing has a standard anymore. Several years ago, there was a Connect group, actually it was kind of an off-grid Connect group, where we participated in this Go Ruck challenge. And the whole idea was that you strapped like 30 plus pounds on your back and you rucked, which is walking with weight, for a distance. And you had to do all these different challenges throughout the time. Well, there was another level of crazy. So I participated in the little crazy. Then there's another group of people, some in this room, that are really crazy, that went to Washington, D.C. and did 50 miles overnight doing this. And then there's even another crazy level beyond that, and it's called Go Ruck Selection. And in Go Ruck Selection, they put these candidates through this like horrific time period of basically like beating their bodies until they cannot move any longer. And they don't even tell them how long it's going to last. You don't know when it's over. You just keep going. And so it's got all these kind of ex-military types screaming in their faces, and they live stream it on Facebook. It's incredible. Like, you can watch it from the lazy boy with chips and salsa, and you just like watch these guys go crazy, and girls go crazy. And so I was watching it because that's who I am. And I watched this guy, the founder of Go Ruck, get in a candidate's face, and he's screaming at them because they weren't doing the right form, the right process. And he screams these words, "The standard is the standard." I was like, wow, this is intense. But he had an incredible point. Because what he was saying was, what you're doing isn't good enough. There is a standard set, and you have to meet the standard. And relativism says, there is no standard other than the one that I set. And here's the problem. You do you is something Jesus never said. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how Jesus, what he did say and didn't say about happiness. And it's important because anything that I've found to be true, I know we all want to be happy, right? Like, nobody says, my goal in life is to set out to be miserable. That's just not what we think. But Jesus had a lot to say about it. In fact, I want to invite you to open your Bibles, open your Hope City app, or follow along on the screen next to me to 1 John chapter 2, verse 15. We're going to start there. And this is the disciple John, writing to a group of believers who are feeling confused, feeling a bit overwhelmed, and deceived by some false teachings. And look at what the disciple John writes to this group. He says, "Do not love this world, nor the things it offers you. For when you love the world, you do not have the love of the Father in you. For the world offers," three things, right? He says, the world offers only a craving for physical pleasure, a craving for everything we see, and pride in our achievements and possessions. These are not from the Father, but are from the world. And this world is fading away along with everything that people crave. But anyone who does what pleases God will live forever." All right, first off, can I just call this out? This is way easier to read than it is to live out. Like, I can read it all day long. It's another thing to live this. Some of your translations might say that the world offers three things: the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, or the pride of life. And John makes three distinctions when it comes to things that we're tempted to love in this world. Three things that we're tempted to just chase after in the mirror. The first is pleasure. He says, you know what? This is what people love. They love pleasure. Everything that tastes good, feels good, right? I mean, think about sin. How many of you, let's take a poll, raise your hand if you can admit that sin looks fun. Okay, there's a few honest people in church, right? Like, none of you are going to raise your hand. Those of you lying in church, that is also a sin. So there you have it. You can't be lying up in here. But the pleasure or the lust of the flesh, sin, it looks fun. And you know what? It might even be fun for a moment. But sin is this temporary pleasure that makes you feel good for a second, and then it has this like immediate feeling of guilt and shame. It's like the pleasure or the lust of the flesh sneaks in so easily, right? It's like, think about the day you come home like just depleted from life, and you're like, oh, you just want to put your feet up, watch some Netflix, relax, whatever show you're into, and you get that first glass of wine and the second glass, then you're like, yeah, well, who cares, like the third glass, whatever, and then you're like, okay, the bottle, and it's like you just start kind of going down that road, because guess what? It feels good. It feels good. Then we have the lust of the eyes, or our possession, the things that everything that we can see, all the things that we would love to have, right? Like, take Instagram, for example. This is basically the lust of the eyes documented for you. Why? You start scrolling, and it's like, I would like my house to look like that. Like, I would like to, yes, please. I will take whatever that advertisement is. Colon broom, like, yeah, 100%. You get, like, you're not getting these crazy ads for how you can get in shape quick without doing anything. They're trying to convince you. They're selling you something. I want to look, and wear clothes like that. I want my garage to be as organized as that. Like, all of these types of things get your attention. This buy now. Who am I to deny myself? You do you, Peter. Click buy now, right? Possessions. Then there's the third thing, pride. The pride of life, that this all appeals to our ego and our attitude. And this can be your position at work. It's like, I got the corner office now with a window. It could be how many followers you have on social media. It could be the time that you caught your kid dancing in the grocery store aisle, and that video went viral to 25 people, and it just puffs you up, and you're like, look at me. Look at what I've done. And see, the problem is, it would be a lot easier to give up these things, the things that we're staring at and chasing after, if they just didn't have some measure of fun to it, some pleasure. But they cloud our vision of God. They do. They just make it harder to see God and what he wants for our lives. And when given the option to see or focus on what is immediately in front of us, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, or to focus on God, who we can't see here on earth, it's a lot easier to pick what's right in front of you. But 1 John 2:15, it says, don't love this world. Like, do not love this world. But what he's saying is, he's not saying, like, you need to hate yourself, hate your life, hate your possessions. He just says, do not love and pattern your life after this earth. He's not saying to hate planet Earth. He's referring to the fallen, man-centered. It's all about me and the guy in the mirror. It's all about how I feel. He's saying that's not the way to live. And John is not giving a suggestion. He's giving a commandment. He knows that we can toggle back and forth between what I see and God. But today I feel like that. But then on Sunday mornings, I'm at church. I'm with my Connect group, and it's just, I'm torn. See, I don't know about you, but if I'm to be the king of my life, that doesn't always end well. Like, if I'm in charge, it's not always selfless. And the problem is, this is what our culture is facing. We live in a world where we think that our individual needs are the most important and they come first. So to look inside of yourself and come up with your own truth, it sounds good in theory, but it's not the gospel. It might be the gospel of this world, but it's not the gospel according to Jesus. See, In the moment when you begin to put yourself at the center and everything else is judged against what you see here, you're putting yourself in the position of God. And when you try to be God, you end up limiting God's work in your own life. This doesn't mean that loving the world means you have to abandon everything and live as a monk. No. See, John actually talks about your attitudes and your motives. Look at verse 16. He says, for the world offers only a craving, just a craving. It's not even really the real deal. Don't miss this, though, because this is more than behavior modification. Back when I was growing up in high school, man, I got to tell you, there was the phrase, don't smoke, don't chew, don't run with girls who do, right? That's just kind of what it was, right? Like this, at least in the conservative churches that I was a part of. It was simple. Keep your behavior in line, right? In high school, I was a good Christian, which meant that I didn't listen to, what was on the radio. I listened to DC talk. Like, I knew those lyrics inside and out. I wasn't listening to Dr. Dre. I was up in DC talk. I knew every word to Jesus Freak album. And every now and then, when nobody else knew, I would sneak and I would listen to a little Gangster's Paradise by Coolio, right? Like, I would sneak in a little Gangster's Paradise, and then behavior modification would kick in, and I'd be like, oh no, I gotta not do that, right? I gotta not do that in order to be a good Christian. And actually, all I was doing was living in a legalistic mindset that God would love me more if I didn't do certain things, if I steered clear of certain things, that I would prove to God and to the world around me that I loved Jesus more. And legalism couldn't be further from the heart of God, further from the heart of the gospel, because legalism says you can sort of earn your way into this. And my Bible, your Bible, the Bible says that you did nothing to earn God's love for you. See, God isn't about behavior management or modification. God is actually about the motives of your heart. So why are we so tempted to buy into the you do you mentality? It's because sin promises satisfaction at the cost of dissatisfaction to God. It promises you this fake and false satisfaction, and eventually it brings suffering to you because sin is just fun for a moment. And then comes the price tag. If you think about, many of the major vices in our world, like greed, power, sex, pornography, overeating, overdrinking, they all promise a solution to you. They all promise, like, you can just kind of feel a little bit less or numb out, or you do you, right? Do whatever makes you feel good. They promise comfort to a source of pain, but we were created for so much more. In fact, 1 Peter 2:9 says, but you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people belonging to God, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful life. So if you're living a you do you mentality, it's because you think that happiness and holiness are at odds with one another. That deep down, maybe some of your mentality, your distorted views of what Christ represents and teaches, you tend to believe that you can't be happy and holy. Holy is just kind of pursuing a life, a righteous life that honors God. You believe that because of holiness, you're destined for a life where you're going to be miserable forever, never allowed to listen to Coolio and Gangster's Paradise. You judge me, but I know you had Lauryn Hill on, all right? A little Beyonce going after you left the parking lot in church today. But have you ever felt like that? That maybe God was holding out on you? Because I'm a Christian, all my friends get to have fun. I don't get to do what they get to do. It's quite the opposite. In fact, we've gotten this so messed up. God created all the wonderful things in the world. And Jesus said this about his Father in Matthew chapter 7, verse 11. He says, if you then, he's comparing us, if you then who are evil know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? Like, if you know how to give your kids and take care of your kids, and you're selfish, imperfect, like we all are, imagine a perfect Father, a perfect Heavenly Father, the kind of gifts that he would give, the kind of things that he wouldn't give, the things that he would hold back for your sake and your benefit. He says, think about that. God isn't holding out from you. He's not holding back from you. He is blessing you. He's giving you so much more than you can even imagine. And with that comes hope. And see, the reality is this, is that holiness and happiness are not incompatible. So if you find yourself at odds and you're like, I don't know, I don't understand. I want to be happy and holy. Well, maybe you should lower your expectations of things here on earth. The things that the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. Maybe you need to say, actually, that's not going to fill me. That's not going to satisfy me. You were created by God, for something so much greater. As a kid, we used to vacation at the shore, and that's the kind of thing you say when you live in Pennsylvania, New Jersey. We're going to go down to the shore, and we would go over to Long Beach Island, and I can remember going into the Surf City 5 and 10, and I would see this gigantic wire cage, and inside this wire cage was hermit crabs, and I was like, I gotta have a hermit crab. Any other hermit crab owners? Yeah, we're a weird group. Like, you get the little cage, and you'd pick out the crab with the shell, and they'd put it in there, and I decided I was going to be the ultimate hermit crab owner. So I had the little sponge that they, because they have to drink out of a sponge, and the little pellet food that they eat, and I put it in that cage, and then I came home, back to my home in Pennsylvania, and I said, this hermit crab is going to be the kingpin hermit crab. Like, he's going to live like none other. So I got this aquarium, and I said, I'm going to put some sand in here, I'm going to put some stuff, and let this guy go, right? And so I put him in there, get rid of all that wire stuff, like, that's chintzy, that's dollar store stuff. Like, let's get this thing looking sharp. And I put a new shell in it, like, just in case he wanted to molt and become like mega crab. And, it wasn't long until I walked into my room and I saw that this hermit crab was all out of its shell, just like, blah, like totally dead. I thought to myself, what gives? Like, I put this guy in the greatest environment that this poor hermit crab ever saw. He was hanging on the side of a wire cage in a 5 and 10. I gave him a whole aquarium, sand galore, like little things, the sponge. What I didn't realize is that hermit crabs are not made for the beach. They're actually tree crabs that they sell at the beach. Like, who knows? They can't survive there. They weren't made for that. And sometimes you and I, we look at the things of this world has to offer, we compare ourselves to that, and then we wonder, like, why are we not actually happy? Why are we, like, dying inside? Because you weren't designed for that. You weren't built for that. God built you for so much more than the things that you can just see and look at in a mirror. The pride of life, the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh. Is it possible that God has a better plan for you? Psalm 16:11 would say so. It actually says, you make known to me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. It's not the things that you chase in life. It's not the promotions. It's not the things that are coming your way. It's actually in the presence of God is the fullness of joy. Notice it's not saying, God, you just show me a mediocre way of life. No. You're going to have life to the full. And it's in those moments that you might be tempted to run back and look in the mirror and kind of base yourself off that. And when you're tempted to say, you do you, I want you to remember this, that temptation is an invitation to run to Christ. This is a moment when you can just turn from your temptation and run towards Jesus, because every temptation is a distraction. It's a method to try and shake up our focus, get it off Christ, and put it back on ourselves, put our eyes on something else. Scrolling on Instagram, and that buy now ad pops up, it's tempting, but run back to Christ. Chasing popularity and success, it's tempting, but run back to Christ and think about what he says about you. Sometimes you may not really know what to do, or you don't know the words to say when you're feeling tempted. That's okay, because Jesus actually said some words. Jesus said something about this. Jesus never said, you do you. That's stuff Jesus never said. But Jesus did say what we now call the Lord's Prayer. In Matthew chapter 6, verses 9 through 13, we see the Lord's Prayer that says, this then is how you should pray. These are the words of Jesus. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. A lot of you have said this a lot of times in life. Maybe you were told, go pray this a whole bunch or pray this, a certain amount of times and God's going to be happy with you. That's not the goal. That's not the goal here. The goal here is that Jesus is giving us some words, some things that we can say in the right moment. He starts out by saying, our Father in heaven. He's not a cosmic cop coming to get you. And he says, your kingdom come and your will be done. Not mine. God, not my selfishness. Lord, God, I want your will to be done. Guys, this is the opposite of you do you mentality. This is God. You do God. You do that. I don't need to do that. I surrender to you. See, whatever is important to you, whatever you're tempted to hang on to, you can just bring this back to God and say, God, I just want to give this to you. I surrender this. My methods, my desires, my wants, Lord. See, this is one of the reasons why I love Connect groups here at Hope City, because in your Connect group, you have an opportunity to be surrounded by people that are going to continually point you back to Jesus. That instead of a mirror, they're going to put a window in front of you, a window into the world of what is it that Jesus has for your life? What is it that God has for you? Because if you're feeling tempted or you're going through the ringer or you're going through the best time in your life, Connect groups are a place for you. If you're saying, you know what, I need connection with other people that are going to help me and point me in the right direction, because man, it's tough. When I go to work, it's so hard for me to try and stay focused on Christ. Man, you need to be in a Connect group. You need to be with other people. And so today, I want to invite you to take a step towards one another in a group, because we need one another. It is so hard to do life all on our own and to not make it about our own desires. There's just something that happens when you serve. There's something that happens when you come to church and you interact with other people. Your eyes get taken off of you and you realize that there's an incredible world around you. You start to see the things that God is doing and might do in you and through you. You start to focus on other people's needs and their thoughts and you get to pray for them and all of a sudden your eyes are open to things beyond just you. It's harder to say you do you when you're in a group with others. On your chairs, there's a card that looks just like this. There's opportunity for you to sign up for a group. And after service today, there's going to be a party out there on the patio to meet some Connect group leaders and get to know them and join a group. I'm telling you, this is one of the best things that you can do for you. This is one of the ways that God has changed my life and worked in my life. Getting together with a group of men on Wednesday mornings at 6 a.m. It might be the hardest thing that I do, getting out of the house for 6 a.m. all week long. And at about 5:55, I asked myself, why am I doing this? About 6:02, 6:03, I remember, I love this. And I love these guys, and I need them in my life. I want to invite you to find the same. I want to invite you to look beyond just yourself and see what is it that God wants to do in your world.